Welcome to the Sam and Joe VA Show, where we teach women just like you how to create your very own in-demand virtual assistant business.
We're your hosts, Sam and Joe, and get ready to have the control, flexibility, and freedom you've always dreamed of.
Welcome to episode 20, What Clients Really Want. So today we have a very special guest, Natalie Sisson. So thanks so much for being here, Natalie.
It's such a pleasure to be here, ladies.
So Natalie is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, coach, podcaster, triathlete, and my very special friend. So Natalie, is there anything that you can't do?
I'm sure there's quite a lot, actually.
That's quite a list. So for 6.5 years, Natalie actually traveled around the world visiting 70 countries as the suitcase entrepreneur. And then you came back to New Zealand, you found your partner, Josh, you bought a lifestyle property, which is amazing, in Upper Hutt, Wellington. You also welcomed 2 white German shepherds into your family, and you completely reinvented your life, didn't you?
I did. That's a very good way of putting it. Thanks, Joe, for summarizing it so well.
So let's start, Natalie, by asking you, what is it that you are really passionate about?
It's a great question. I have quite a few passions, but I'd say the one that has been top of mind for a long time is helping people understand how they can get paid to be them and make an income and impact that they desire so that they can live a really awesome life. That'd be the thing that I pretty much wake up every day to go out on a mission to help people achieve.
That's awesome. And yeah, that is one of the things that I really love about you. And I always get so inspired every time we meet up, have conversations. I just love that you've actually created the exact life with the freedom that you want and how you want to work, like absolutely completely. And I know that Fridays is actually your Freedom Friday, isn't it? So you don't usually work on a Friday. So we're really grateful. Thank you so much for putting yourself into our schedule for our podcast episode. So we really, really appreciate your time.
You're so welcome. I'm also writing a book, so I was going to be writing today anyway. It's a nice welcome reprieve.
So Natalie, is it off and on that you've had a team and virtual assistants and other people helping in your businesses?
Yeah, I've pretty much had a virtual assistant since 2012 when I realized I just couldn't do it all like we all do. And then pretty much had one consistently right throughout until now, and added team members for other areas of my business on and off throughout those last kind of 8 years.
Fantastic. And that's exactly why you were the perfect person to be on our episode today. And we can chat to you and pick your brain about what it is you look for in a virtual assistant when you're searching, and in terms of what your expectations are when you actually hire them. So
yeah.
Are you ready? We're going to pick your brain.
Yeah.
So talk us through like what your general experience has been with your different hires and your virtual assistants that you've had.
Sorry, I was just trying to think, where do I start? I feel like it's been really varied, and most of that has come down to me not always being super clear on my expectations out of the role, and also on getting out of the way myself. So I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is that I'm usually the bottleneck in my business, like most good CEOs and entrepreneurs are, and that there's various levels of delegation that you're prepared for when you first start out, until you find people that you really trust and appreciate and have great skills that you just feel you can completely hand over the things that are important. So I'd say that the journey has been probably it's been really positive, but most of the time I think when something hasn't gone as it should have, it's usually been on my side. The way in which I hired, or the expectations that I did or didn't set, or my personal super high expectations, and not allowing people to kind of settle in and live up to what they can do. Yeah, we can delve into that.
yeah, absolutely. Because what do you feel like your virtual assistants could have done? Like, let's say that you hadn't set expectations well, or maybe they were floundering and not really sure. Like, what do you feel like those virtual assistants could have done differently or better to actually like get it back on track?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think often for me it was that they could set better boundaries. So they could be really clear up front. Hey, Natalie, this is what we agreed on. And these are the tasks that you set from the get-go in the role description. And maybe to say, I find we're doing all these things now, which is totally fine. But I've either got to have more hours or I've got to delegate some of this that you've given me to somebody else. Or maybe we need somebody else on the team to do some of these things, especially when it's not their core expertise or something they're skilled at. So I think for me, it's just about, and I know that can be scary for virtual assistants, is one, pushing back and going, actually, this isn't something I'm comfortable with or something that I know how to do. And most people that I've worked with are like, but I'll figure it out and learn it. But I feel it's actually your role as a virtual assistant to say, here are my core areas that I'm really good at. Here are the things I'm happy to learn. And here are things that I just know won't light me up. I don't actually enjoy doing. They're not my forte, and therefore maybe we should look for somebody else to fill this in the role. That'd be one thing I'd suggest that would have been really helpful. And that also just takes knowing yourself and knowing the business that you're coming into. And I think another thing is probably having the guts and courage to just step up and go, hey, I'm going to manage you more. Because I quite like to be managed. I quite like it when people come in and go, hey, Natalie, I'm going to do this. You need to do this by this date. I'm taking care of these. You need to take care of that. It's actually sounds odd, but it's quite liberating when most of the time you're doing that all the time in your business for everybody else. So I think it sounds odd, but bossing your clients around a little bit more and being very clear on what you need and when, and managing and planning for them is something that I find invaluable if a virtual assistant is happy to come in and do that.
Boundaries are huge, aren't they? Boundaries are massive, and that communication, I think, comes through in everything that you've just said. It comes back to that communication and being really open and honest, and being able to say, hey, look, actually, this isn't my area of skill set, but I can find you someone that can absolutely help you with that.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of fear around, and I hope that everyone listening who can really listen to what Natalie is saying when she talks about, I really want someone to tell me what I should be doing, and give me the deadline. All too often we see virtual assistants who work in a reactive way rather than a proactive way. And I think if having the conversation with your client like that would scare you, one of the tips I can say is that if you actually get permission up front, so someone could say to you, Nat, like if your virtual assistant said, hey, Nat, would it be okay if I actually told you what I needed from you and gave you deadlines? Like, would it be okay if I did that? You would obviously say yes. And so then when you have that permission, then it's often that it's a lot easier to actually have those conversations with a client. So if you're feeling like that makes you a little bit panicky inside, ask permission and go from there.
Because I think you'll actually also gain the respect of your client more. Like, I usually really appreciate it when somebody's like, that's not actually something that I can do or want to do. I'm like, oh, that's good to know. The other thing that I've definitely made the mistake of, or more importantly, seen my clients and customers do, is hire a virtual assistant and assume that they can do all the things. And over the years, I've definitely started hiring more for certain areas of my business. So I have a virtual assistant right now who is solely focused on WordPress related tasks and improvements. So my sales pages, my landing pages, my SEO optimization to a point, going through and fixing links and all those things. And that's something she really likes doing, plus designing some of the pages. And I'm not getting her to do anything else that a virtual assistant would, because that's her jam. And so I know she's in a really good spot there. And that means that I get to hire another virtual assistant part-time to do more of the email management, calendar management, podcast scheduling, etc. And over the years, I think I used to have somebody, and I would hope that they could be a good writer, that they could be a good visual designer, that they could be great at organization, that they could be great at customer service, that they understood WordPress, and it's just not realistic. And I see a lot of my clients now doing the same. What have you asked them to do? And they'll list off all these things that are actually 4 or 5 different roles and 4 or 5 different experience sets that I don't even believe one person could have, even if I think I have all those things. That's taken years of experience to get there. So sometimes we can be pretty unrealistic.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's one of the things that we say to virtual assistants too, is like, find something that you really love, that you're really good at, and just be really good at that one thing. And so all of your learning and your training and research all focuses on that one specialty. And for entrepreneurs like you, you're then looking for someone with a certain specialty. So let's jump into like, what do you actually look for and how do you go about hiring someone?
Yeah, and I just love to add one more thing to that last bit, Jo, because I think that's a really good point, is also even niching to a specific industry. So I always really appreciate when I meet a virtual assistant, for example, who is a virtual assistant for online business coaches, because pretty much she's going to know about my business and what I have going on and be able to jump straight in, versus a virtual assistant for a wellness specialist. But it helps me to then choose somebody who's got that niche and understanding of my business model and industry. And then to answer your question, what was it? What do I look for?
Yeah, what do you look for in when you're hiring? And then how do you find them? Like, where are you finding your virtual assistant? Where do you go looking?
Cool. Two total different questions. So great. I'll start with the where do I find them? So I've got two main methods. I've always loved going to Upwork. It's not necessarily the best platform in the world, but for me, I've used it since the get-go and the inception. It's where I found my first virtual assistant, and I often go back there to find great people. And then second, my community. So I will often ask for referrals, or if I'm dealing with somebody and they're like, I've got this great virtual assistant, I will often say, fantastic, what are they doing for you? Would you be able to make an introduction if they have availability? And I'll do the same back to my customers and clients as well. So I love referring people. So I generally look at Upwork or platforms like onlinejobs.ph, but typically Upwork, and then second in my community and my network of peers. That's worked really well for me over the years. And then what I look for in them, I think, again, is a really good example of mistakes that I've made in the past, is I used to often hire people that I liked. So if I liked them and I got on well with them and they had a similar kind of energy to mine, and I felt like giving them a chance, like, oh, I really like them, so therefore I'll train them up, versus hiring for skills. And sometimes hiring for somebody who's not the opposite of you, but has a different way of approaching things, because you don't need more of you. That can just get messy. And so I'm a big fan of the wealth dynamics profile test, which I know you know, Jo, and Sam probably didn't, but I find that really helpful to know where they're at on that spectrum, because it's a really great team hiring profile test. And if they're kind of the direct opposite energy to me, or they're more of a different skill set, different energy, it can work really, really well, even if I feel a little bit restricted by it. Like if they push back on things, or they take more time and diligence to do things, or they're more attention to detail, that's actually a really good thing, even if I'm operating at a speed of light and hoping for other things to be done more quickly. I've just learned over the years to go, that's my working style and it's not everybody else's. So just understanding their working style and looking for somebody that's not necessarily the most likable person, but the person with the skill sets and the experience and the I guess I'd say testimonials or proof to match.
Well, I think that's a really good point, is have those, ask for those testimonials, ask for the reviews, so that someone like Natalie, who's looking for a virtual assistant, if she's not getting a referral from someone, you're actually looking for the reviews, aren't you, to see, like, okay, do they have social proof? Have they had other clients? Are those clients willing to give a review? Can be a good indication. And so let's say that someone's given you a referral, how are you deciding, like on a call or a video call, like what are you looking for? There's going to be red flags that you probably look for, and there's probably going to be like, I can see that they have the right skills or the right fit for me. Like, what are you looking for on that video call?
Yeah, great question, because I can even just tell you, with hiring a digital business manager recently, the very first interview that I jumped on with this person, they talked at me for about 5 to 10 minutes and they were all excited and go, but they talked at me about things. So they didn't actually let me ask any questions initially. And we spent almost 45 minutes on the interview, and I feel like they were just having verbal diarrhea, if I'm really honest. And I had no doubts that they had good skills that I wanted, but that already was a bit of a red flag for me, that they were doing more talking than listening. And when I pointed to sort of asking for specific examples, they were quite all over the place. So I think, just as you said, Jo, know before you jump on a call, just have some either case studies, or if you don't have enough experience under your belt yet, talk about some projects that you're working on, and definitely for me, return on investment. So not just that, yep, I can post on social media, but I have posted on social media and increased the engagement by X, gotten this many leads, or increased the following by X is a really good example of going, okay, there's some thought and care there, and you're doing something with a purpose. That is helpful to me. I think other red flags are, one, just even not turning up on time, not having your video on, not being in a quiet space, and not being willing to ask questions back. That's not always the case, but I do find that certain virtual assistants will kind of say what they think you want to hear. And I'm looking for somebody who's prepared to say, this is what's important to me, and this is what I found, and here's what I know to be true from the experience I've had, and here's what I'm looking for as much as what you're looking for, because it's a two-way relationship.
Yeah, so you want somebody that is coming on that initial discovery call to know a little bit about your business and know a little bit about what you do, don't you?
Yeah, that's a really great point as well. So have done some research and not just come in blind. That's a really great point, actually, because I think a lot of people just jump on the call and they're excited, but they haven't looked into what you do yet. And what I find really impressive is somebody who's like, I've noticed that you've been doing this, for example, and have you ever thought about doing it this way? Because that already shows me that they're proactive and they have initiative. And every single person will speak to wanting somebody who's got initiative, but it's actually really important. Somebody who can actually suggest things that we might be able to do better. And they don't have to come in and change the world, but they can come in over time and start to improve things. Because often what's being done isn't necessarily the best or most effective or efficient way. So it's really neat when I have virtual assistants who come in and actually improve things that I have.
I think I want to go back to one of the points that you made, Nat, because this is really important for being on. So Natalie, you called it an interview. So for virtual assistant, this is your sales call. So if you are spending more than half the time talking, we try and say, like, you need to do 25% of the talking as a virtual assistant. You've got to have those questions there. You've got to feel like, so as a client, you want to feel like they understand you, they understand your business, and they understand what would be required. And you're not going to buy from someone or hire someone until you feel like they have actually understood you. It's like the analogy that if you go into a doctor's surgery and you go in there and the doctor says, oh, you need to have this, and I'm going to prescribe you this medicine, and you haven't said what your problem is or what's wrong or said anything, then you're not going to want to actually engage with that person or take what that doctor is actually prescribing you. So it's the same for when you're on a sales call with a client, someone like Natalie. They're looking for you to actually understand them so that they know that you've got it and that you really want to work for them, you're excited about it, and you're asking all those questions.
Yeah, and I don't think we expect the world, but we just want to know that you've gone to the website, you've had a look around, you know what the business is made up of, or the activities that we do. So then you can speak to that more and go, I don't have experience in publishing a podcast, but I have experience in writing up blog posts, and I listen to a lot of podcasts and I enjoy them, and these are the things that I see done well. So even if you don't have that particular experience, it's quite nice to speak to something that you'd like to emulate, or that you at least know about the topic area.
Yeah, or you've noticed the marketing strategy that they have behind a podcast. Like, even being able to convey that, I think, would come across really well.
Yeah.
So Natalie, just going back a little bit, you said earlier on that you find a lot of some of your VAs have been through referrals and word of mouth, which is awesome. When somebody says, "Hey, I've got this VA, you should check him out," even we do have men in the industry. Do you then go straight to their online presence to have a little bit of a stalk to check them out, or you just go straight? You're happy to take that referral as it is?
That's a good question, actually. Well, often what I'll do is, if I see somebody's doing something really well, and I'll say, do you have somebody and they do a really good job on these things, I then ask for the introduction. And then before probably jumping on a call with them, I definitely say, are you able to shoot me your, as you said, online profile or your website, or do you have a PDF, not CV, so to speak, but pretty much your experience and any case studies or examples that you can share. So that gives me time to look that over and then make sure it's who I'd like to go forward with. And so, yeah, I think it's really, really useful to have that online presence. A lady that I was recently interviewing had that. She had her own blog for mums who were also virtual assistants. So it was quite easy straight away to see her writing style. They had a podcast, they did videos, and she sent me all those links really specifically. And even though it was her doing that work for her own business, it really helped me to understand, cool, she's got a handle on this, and that they do that for clients too.
I think that's a really good point, because often virtual assistants come into the industry and they say, how am I going to show what I've done if I haven't got any clients yet? They're trying to find their first client. But I think that's a really great point, is do a really great job on your own stuff. Or we even say, choose someone, ask them if you can do a few things for them that you could then have in your, like a portfolio or a proposal, and do those things for free or in return for the testimonial or the review. Just get something under your belt, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a paid client, but something that you can show someone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to have a full-on business, but even if you have a website and a couple of blog posts, and those are examples of your writing style and your web design skills, and also if you have a social media profile, even if it's just one, and you're like, I predominantly use Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest, here's examples of what I've been doing. Yeah. That's all you need, just to show some proof.
Fantastic. How do you know when the relationship, what are some good signs for your relationship with your virtual assistant going really well?
One of the biggest is that they summarize after the call that we've had, or the sales call, as you call it, the interview. They summarize what they heard and what they felt I needed. So that's really nice. I often put that back onto the person to say, could you send me an email with a summary of what we've talked about here today, what sounded good to you, what parts you'd love to be doing, and anything else. And that's usually a really good opportunity for them to show me how much they listened, what they got out of it, because, you know, what I'm saying might not be coming across as what I'm intending. And also just a good chance for them to follow up and say, I particularly would love to work with you on this because that's my skill set. Here are some examples of things I've done. So I feel like that follow-up email and response is just a really good time to show more initiative. And also to be pretty clear about your boundaries. Like, if you didn't get to discussing rates or time zones or working hours on the call, which hopefully you should, and if a client doesn't ask you about that, it's quite good for you to step up, I think, and say that. But that email is also a really nice place to come back and say, by the way, I predominantly work, 25-hour work weeks or 30-hour work weeks. You can get hold of me during these times, and I'm happy to work every so often one evening if it's planned in advance. So I think it's really good for you to set your own clear boundaries once again at that point, because a lot of entrepreneurs work all over the place and they expect kind of instant replies, and it's up to you to set that and that respectful tone of like, this is when I'll get back to you. And once if you know up front, it's great. So I think it's best to work that out before you even start with them and just really hold true to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of that email with them kind of summarizing your discussion, I guess the things you'd be looking for is that would come through promptly, grammar's really good, spelling's accurate, stuff like that.
Yep, 100%. Maybe some nice bullet points, and maybe even a Loom. I'm such a fan of Loom. Even a Loom video response to talk over the top of that. Or maybe if I ask for them to share some more examples in a follow-up email for them to talk over the top of their examples as a video, that would be good initiative as well, and shows that they're confident using those tools, because that's the main way our team communicate. We use, Slack, Asana, Looms, Google Drive. Those are pretty much, that's our world. And if somebody's confident on using it already, it's great. So it's a nice way to actually pick up on probably what I said in the conversation and then come back using some of the tools that we talked about.
That would be very smart. Have you had anyone who's really blown you away and done all of that? Or is that you really wish that had?
From the virtual assistant side, I'm going to be honest, less so, but just with having recently hired a digital business manager, quite a few of these were virtual assistants who've progressed up into what is a online business manager role. So they've got a little bit more experience behind them, but they've just been really good about showing me in Looms portfolios, going through their work and being very clear about that. Also then showing examples of courses that they've been involved in, websites that they've helped build. And I think it's important to be honest there about, hey, I didn't do all the design on this, but I was responsible for the copy or the implementation of this. And so I really like it I have been quite blown away by what people are being prepared to do, and also just mini tests, which I'm always happy to pay for. But for example, I got one of the people to write up the podcast show notes, and she did it like in a really short turnaround and didn't expect any payment, even though I offered it up front. It only took 40 minutes of her time, but it was a really great way for her to show me what she can do. I was really appreciative. And so did the other person that I was interviewing. So even offering sometimes to say, hey, I'm prepared to do this task. If it's like a half an hour task, let me show you what I can do. And just to go that extra mile, I think is going to get you the job if you're going to be that much more proactive.
Yeah. Especially for those that maybe don't have a lot of experience under their belt in the VA world. So those that have maybe got the skill set, but just don't have a lot of testimonials or a big portfolio to be able to share with you, that would be a great way for them to get their foot in the door, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you're starting out, I mean, just going that extra mile could land you that dream job versus just being a little bit more hum-ho, and I'm sure there's a lot to manage, but if you really like this person and you like their business and you feel that you could have a long-lasting relationship and job with them, then going that extra mile is really, really useful.
Nice. So what would be your, this is my number one, or my, the key thing that you want to say to virtual assistants looking to get hired?
Well, first off, I loved how you both went, That's really cute. My biggest thing, I think, would be just go for it. Like, if you want to stand out in a sea of sameness, as Joe said earlier on, pick that one or two things that you think you're really good at and just continue to focus in on them. Because I would far prefer a virtual assistant to say, here's what I know I'm really good at, this, and these are the results I've gotten for clients, or these are what I know I can get for you. And I'm also willing to learn these things. It just makes such a difference for me versus somebody who promises me the world and tells me that they have experience across all the things that I've mentioned in the job description, because I just don't believe that's to be true. And I think often that is a test in itself, is just somebody who really owns it and goes, here's what I know I can do really well. The rest I can learn, or the rest we can find somebody to delegate. And I'm happy to, work with you on that. But that makes somebody stand out for me, as well as that personal, here's a video introduction, or here's a loom that I shot for you, just something that goes that extra mile, because in my mind, that means you're going to do that in my business. And then I get to, hopefully reward you really well for that extra effort.
That's fantastic advice. I absolutely love that. And I know that there are a lot of virtual assistants who are just starting that want to promise everything. They really want that first client, so they feel a little bit desperate to get that first client. So they do make big promises and they do say, yeah, I can do everything. But I think that is at the detriment of actually standing out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if I think back to interviews when I was going for jobs a long, long, long time ago, I was very, very clear on the things that I loved about the job description that I wanted to go into. And I was also very clear on, I haven't covered off on these things before, but I have no doubt that, if I'm shown, I could learn or upskill in that way. But here are the things that I know I can hit the ground running with. And that's usually more than enough.
Yeah. Fantastic. Is there anything else that we haven't covered, Nat? In your team at the moment, what's your team structure like? Like, who are you getting what to do? And are you using global team members? So we're in New Zealand here, global team members. Are you using New Zealand virtual assistants? What's the structure of your team?
Yeah, so many good things to pick on. I was going to say, if there is one more thing that's incredibly important to me personally, it's your communication style. I really appreciate just knowing what you're working on. I'm not the big brother or the big sister looking over your shoulder, but if just in each day, just saying, hey, Nat, these are the top 3 things I'm working on, just makes me feel better as a client to know, there are some virtual assistants who will just go incognito and go off and do a task and come back a week later and go, here it is. And in the meantime, I've been like, what's happening? So one of the biggest things I think in any role, especially in a virtual team, is just clear communication. And again, I will get back to you within 10, 12, 24 hours, and I'll do it through Slack or whatever you've agreed on. So that's one more thing I would add. And then my team is, always been global. So I'm so used to working across time zones. I currently have the virtual assistant in WordPress who is in the Philippines, my podcast editor, Rolly, who has been with me on the team since 2012, and that's literally all he does is edit my podcast and sometimes videos. I have my new digital business manager, as in new this week in the time of recording, and she is based in France but is South African. I have a designer that I have used up until now because Lauren has the design skills, who's based in Portugal. And then I bring in contractors depending on if I'm going through a launch or if I need something else. And they have honestly been from all around the world. And most recently, I did have an online business manager based in New Zealand because I was looking for somebody local finally who was on my time zone that I could communicate with easily. But I'm pretty much happy to make it work because my business has always been global from the days when I was traveling the world. However, I do think that if you are located in one place and your audience is in that country as well, it's really nice to work with somebody local just to be able to have those day-to-day conversations at the right times.
Yeah, I love that though. It just really reiterates that virtual assistants, there are no borders. You can work for anyone, anywhere in the world. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Lauren, who's with me right now, like she's a mum. And so she loves getting up at 5 a.m., bless her. And her most important hours of work are sort of that 5:30 till 7:30 a.m. So when we had our first call, it was my afternoon. And I was like, wait a minute, isn't it the middle of the night for you or really early? And she's like, yeah, but I love this time because my brain is firing. I'm an early bird. It's before my child gets up. And so it works for me totally. And I'm willing to be flexible with my team. Some people less so, but again, that's finding the right person to work with, right? And looking for the person who's going to fit in with your schedule as much as theirs.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Virtual assistants that are listening to this episode, not every client that you have the opportunity to talk to is going to be your right fit. So it works both ways, doesn't it? And they can't take it personally. It's, in fact, it's probably a good thing if you know immediately, this is not going to work. There's personality things, there's boundary issues, there's expectations, whatever it is. It's okay for the virtual assistant as well as the client to say, thanks, it's been lovely meeting you, but no, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Yeah, definitely, because I remember Angeline, who'd been with me as my virtual assistant for years, she finally got a full-time job, which I know she'd always wanted, and she was doing around 10 to 15 hours a week for me. So I was really happy to say 100%, go do it. But within a week, she was actually back asking if she could work with me because she said they just didn't respect her hours. They were ringing her at 2 a.m. They were wanting her to work all the time, and it was like 50 or 60 hours a week. And I just don't think she'd been clear enough up front on I'm a working mum and these are the times when I work. And unfortunately with that, I wasn't able to take her back because I just spent a good 1 to 2 weeks putting a lot of energy into finding a replacement because I needed to. She'd only given me a week's notice. So I think it's a really important point that you've said, Samantha, is to let them know early because a lot of energy goes into hiring. I know it's a lot for you going with the client, but on my end, this has been a pretty exhausting week and a half of going through all the applications and doing the interviews and getting back to people. And for next time, I will have Lauren do this for me when I'm hiring. But for me this time, it was, there's a lot of energy, just mental energy that goes into it, as well as the handover process I like to do that well. And there's energy there as well. So you just don't want to muck anybody around. So if you can call it early or if you can get clear on that early, it's really appreciated from the client end.
I think it's important that we don't just go and say yes to every single client, and we actually have, as virtual assistants, your own boundaries, and that when you have those boundaries being met and you're meeting the expectations of the client and you've had those conversations up front, it's actually really much more enjoyable in that working relationship, and it can be a longer relationship and a really fulfilling relationship as long as you are choosing clients carefully and clients are choosing virtual assistants carefully. Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the Sam and Joe VA Show. If you'd like to find out more, head to the Savvy School website to check out the amazing members club and find more free resources.
You can find us at savvyschool.co.nz.